Hey there, Miss Mon is back with the rest of Chapter 5 from the Phantom Tollbooth. And so far in Chapter 5, we know that Milo and Talk have been sentenced to, like, was it 6 million years in the jail. And the sheriff walks them to the jail cell, which is basically in a dungeon. And he's like, by the way, be careful, there's like a wicked witch in here. And they happen to meet the witch right when we left off last time. Don't be frightened, she laughed. I'm not a witch. I'm a witch, like W-H-I-C-H. Oh, said Milo, because he couldn't think of anything else to say. I'm Faintly Macbree, the not-so-wicked witch, she continued, and I'm certainly not going to harm you. What's a witch? Asked Milo, releasing Talk and stepping a little closer. Well, said the old lady, just as a rat scurried across her foot, I am the king's great aunt. For years and years, I was in charge of choosing which words were to be used for all occasions, which ones to say and which ones not to say, which ones to write and which ones not to write. As you can well imagine, with all the thousands to choose from, it was a most important and responsible job. I was given the title of Official Witch, which made me very proud and happy. At first, I did my best to make sure that only the most proper and fitting words were used. Everything was said clearly and simply, and no words were wasted. I had signs posted all over the place, and all over the palace and marketplace, which said, brevity is the soul of wit. But power corrupts, and soon I grew miserly and chose fewer and fewer words, trying to keep as many as possible for myself. I had new signs posted which said, it's hard to read. Like you can see it's in this kind of like fancy cursive. An ill-chosen word is the fool's messenger. Soon sales began to fall off in the market. The people were afraid to buy as many words as before, and hard times came to the kingdom. But still I grew more and more miserly. Soon there were so few words chosen that hardly anything could be said, and even casual conversation became difficult. Again, I had new signs posted which said, speak fitly or be silent wisely. And finally, I had even these replaced by ones which read simply, silence is golden. All talk stopped. No words were sold. The marketplace closed down, and the people grew poor. When the king saw what had happened, he became furious and had me cast into this dungeon where you see me now, an older and wiser woman. That was all many years ago, she continued, but they never appointed a new witch, and that explains why today people use as many words as they can and think themselves very wise for doing so. For always remember that while it is wrong to use too few, it is often far worse to use too many. When she had finished, she sighed deeply, patted Milo gently on the shoulder, and began knitting once again. And have you been down here ever since then? Asked Milo sympathetically. Yes, she said sadly. Most people have forgotten me entirely, or remember me wrongly as a witch, W-I-T-C-H, not a witch, W-H-I-C-H. But it matters not, she went on happily, for they are equally frightened of both. I don't think you are frightening, said Milo, and Talk wagged his tail in agreement. What do you think? Is she a nice witch or bad witch? Is she going to help Milo and Talk? I thank you very much, said Faintly Macbree. You may call me Aunt Faintly. Here, have a punctuation mark. And she held out a box of sugar-coated question marks, periods, commas, and exclamation points. That's all I get to eat now. Well then, when I get out of here, I'm going to help you, Milo declared forcefully. That's very nice of you, she replied, but the only thing that can help me is the return of rhyme and reason. The return of what? Asked Milo. Rhyme and reason, she repeated, but that's another long story, and you may not want to hear it. We would like to very much, barked Talk. We really would, agreed Milo, and as the witch rocked slowly back and forth, she told them this story. So, chapter 6. faintly macabre story. Once upon a time, the land was barren and frightening wilderness, whose rocky mountains sheltered the evil winds and whose barren valleys offered hospitality to no man. Few things grew, and those that did were bent and twisted, and their fruit was as bitter as wormwood. What wasn't waste was desert, and what wasn't desert was rock, and the demons of darkness made their homes in the hills. Evil creatures roamed at will through the countryside and down to the sea. It was known as the land of Null. Then one day a small ship appeared on the Sea of Knowledge. It carried a young prince seeking the future. In the name of goodness and truth, he laid claim to the country and set out to explore his new domain. The demons, monsters, and giants were furious at his presumption and banded together to drive them out. The earth shook with their battle, and when they had finished, all that remained to the prince was a small piece of land at the edge of the sea. "I'll build my city here," he declared, and that is what he did. Before long, more ships came, bearing settlers for the new land, and the city grew and pushed its boundaries farther and farther out. Each day it was attacked anew, but nothing could destroy the prince's new city, and grow it did. So there's a picture of the land and of the prince. I think that's the prince there. Soon it was no longer called a city. It was a kingdom, and it was called the Kingdom of Wisdom. But outside the walls, all was not safe, and the new king vowed to conquer the land that was rightfully his. So each spring he set forth with his army, and each autumn he returned. And year by year the kingdom grew larger and more prosperous. He took to himself a wife, and before long had 2 fine young sons, to whom he taught everything he knew, so that one day they might rule wisely. When the boys grew to young manhood, the king called to them and said, "I am becoming an old man and can no longer go forth to battle. You must take my place and find new cities in the wilderness, for the kingdom of wisdom must grow." And so they did. One went south to the foothills of confusion and built Dictionopolis, the city of words. And one went north to the mountains of ignorance and built Digitopolis, the city of numbers. Both cities flourished mightily, and the demons were driven back still further. Soon other cities and towns were founded in the new lands, and at last only the farthest reaches of the wilderness remained with these terrible creatures. And there they waited, ready to strike down on all who ventured near or relaxed their guard. The 2 brothers were glad, however, to go their separate ways, for they were by nature very suspicious and jealous of each other. Each one tried to outdo the other, and they worked so hard and diligently at it that before long their cities rivaled even wisdom in size and grandeur. So Digitopolis and Dictionopolis have become bigger than the original kingdom. Words are more important than wisdom, said one privately. Numbers are more important than wisdom, thought the other to himself, and they grew to dislike each other more and more. The old king, however, who knew nothing of his son's animosity, was very happy in the twilight of his reign, and spent his days quietly walking and contemplating in the royal gardens. His only regret was that he'd never had a daughter, for he loved little girls as much as he loved little boys. One day, as he was strolling peacefully about the grounds, he discovered 2 tiny babies that had been abandoned in a basket under the grape arbor. They were beautiful golden-haired girls. And that's where I'll stop for today. What do you think is going to happen next? Are the boys going to continue to fight over what's more important, numbers versus words? And who are these babies that the king has just found? Stay tuned.